Welcome to another We Wonder. If it's Wednesday, it's a We Wonder. Today's topic is the power of networking. And I can tell you, if you're in the business world in any shape or form, understand the power of networking. At least you understand the need for networking. It's basically how we all build our relationships with other folks and how we move ourselves forward, how we develop those lead sources, and how we communicate our value in the overall marketplace. And so the interesting part about today is we have a fantastic guest who is an expert on the topic, and I'm going to introduce him in just a moment. So before we get started, again, I am Chris Pfluger. I am the Chief Development Officer here at We Insure, and today's guest is Frank Agin. Now, Frank has a list of credentials, and actually the origin story of how he got into this is fantastic, so we're going to ask him that first. But he's also has 8 books written on this particular topic, so of networking. So we are going to get an education today. Frank, welcome to the video here.
That's a high bar. I've got the pressure's on, isn't it? Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
It is. And I'm pretty excited about this because I use, networking is the lifeblood of every single organization out there, whether people know it or not. And if you're in the sales arena or you're in the recruiting arena of any sort for your business, which everybody should be, you have to really understand the value of that networking. So for today, I'd love for people to hear your story about how you got started and what it really meant to you in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's people ask me how I started this. I fell into it. I was doing the wrong things at the right time and kind of learned. But anyhow, to go back in time, I live in Columbus, Ohio. I came here 30 some years ago to go to law school. I got a law degree. I got an MBA from the Ohio State University. Great school, great prestige. And my mindset, Chris, is, you know what? I'm going to do well. I'm going to study. I'm going to be, it's a great student. And the more you know, the better you're going to be. I got a job as a tax consultant with a international public accounting firm. Great pay, great everything. I didn't want to do taxes for the rest of my life, but I figured, you know what? I've got all these credentials. At that point, I'd picked up a CPA. I'm going to go into private practice. And I tell people that a funny thing happened to me when I went into private practice. And the funny thing was that nothing happened. I had no idea how to get clients. When you work in those big firms, they just give it to you. Mm-hmm. Come in 6 days a week, you're just going to work. And that was fine. But when you're out in the world as an attorney or as, many of your agents, you got to find it. It's not coming to you. And so I spent about 4 to 6 weeks kind of being that bad actor running around to networking events, just shoving my cards in people's faces, hoping that somebody would, hire me to do something. And it wasn't working. And so I had lunch one day with a friend of mine who took a different path out of law school, and she had started her own firm. And so I asked her, I said, what do I need to do to be successful? I don't want to go begging for my job back. I don't want to be this tax person. She said, you need to join a tips club or a leads group. Well, I had really no idea what she was talking about, but I didn't feel like I had a lot of other choices. So I showed up one morning with a bunch of other people. There were probably 8 other people. And it was this organization that brought together entrepreneurs, sales reps, and professionals to a weekly meeting where they learned about each other and exchanged referrals. One person in each category. And immediately it made total sense to me, Chris, because I realized in that moment that I could lift up my world by helping other people and trusting they would do the same for me, right? I mean, I could talk about you all day and brag on you and brag on We Insurance or brag on, really anybody and feel great about it. But if I self-promote for 5 minutes, I'm exhausted. So, I learned right there that I really had to help other people. And so I got very involved in that organization, became that chapter's first president, became the organization's first franchisee. And then in the early 2000s, I bought out the organization and stopped the practice of law. So I have literally spent the last 20, 25 years working with small business types, helping them become more successful through networking. Really what it boils down to.
And I have to say that is a unique perspective, but when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? It's people in other industries, and and this happens all the time naturally. If you think about it, someone says, "Hey, do you know a plumber? Do you know an accountant? Do you know an attorney? Do you know a real estate agent? Do you know an insurance agent?" Right? And it comes up all the
Yeah.
time. Someone, if you have good relationships out there, and that's why we had that one sign up there before. Networking equals relationships.
Yeah.
If you have those relationships in place, they'll say, "Man, I've got the best guy ever," and that has more validity than almost anything else. You can look up a 5-star rating, but if your good friend says, "I've had a fantastic relationship with this person, you should try it," 9 chances out of 10, you're getting that business.
No, absolutely. Because people are afraid to, well, we don't really have the yellow pages anymore, but they don't want to do the Google search. They want to know, who is the mechanic?
Sure.
Who is the guy here? They want to know those things. And that mechanic is going to borrow your trust if you're referring your client, or your agents are borrowing the trust of realtors and other people in the community to say, you know what, you need to talk to my guy we insure. He takes care of me. He is going to take care of you. And that's really how it works. And it's always worked this way. It's not something that's new to the new millennium. It's George Washington connected with Betsy Ross because they went to church together. That's why she designed the American flag, because they sat in pews next to each other. That's the story. I mean, so this is nothing new. It's just we're better at capitalizing and really understanding it.
Well, we can actually make it work, proactively too, right? Just like your organization, you can actually proactively put something together and encourage your referrals and relationships and mutually benefit across a larger group. So I think that's where I think the value is. And again, I think it's really, and we'll talk about in a second here, kind of a science, right? It's a science of networking, in your mind and everyone out there, if you realize it or not, it's just not always organic. It really happens for a reason.
Well, I mean, it absolutely does. We are hardwired to have these relationships. And I tell people that, let's go back in time, not 300 years, not 3,000 years, but maybe 30,000 years, 10,000 years. We lived in tribes or clans or whatever you want to call it, of about 150 people. And we relied on those people. And you had to have relationships. You had to contribute to the tribe. And if you didn't contribute to the tribe, you were out. And if you were out, it was a death sentence because you couldn't survive on your own. And so we're hardwired to have these relationships and help one another. And that's all still really in our DNA. That's why things like small talk work. There are things going on in the human mind that we're really just beginning to understand what the brain is doing. But it really is a science. People think it's an art. It's a science. It's very duplicatable, very duplicatable.
That's fantastic. And I know that a lot of anyone who's in sales, and all of us, I would consider us all in sales in some form or fashion, rely on those relationships. And frankly, I take pride in referring very strong, other partners, very much so. Like, and I have another partner in, real estate, or someone else who is, a fantastic, plumber, whatever it might be, my accountant, same type of thing. I take pride in referring that person. You want to make sure that person is taken care of because it's a friend of yours. Now you're referring someone else you have another relationship with and saying, this is very important to me. It's important to you. I've got the right person. They put you two together. And so it gives me a sense of satisfaction.
Exactly. You feel good about that. And in reality, you're helping two people. You're helping your friend get a plumber who's going to take care of the problem. And you're helping the plumber. And they both come away knowing that. They both come away knowing that, wow, I can come to Chris and he's going to take care of me. I trust him.
Well, do you feel like that, most of those people are sitting there with a handout saying, hey, I sent you a referral, give me some money, or that really just more of a sense of accomplishment and then also understanding that there's a reciprocal relationship there. It's going to come back around.
The people who, well, I think there are both types out there. There's a great book out there. It's called Give and Take, written by Dr. Adam Grant. He's at the Wharton School of Business. And in the book, he talks about there are really three types of people. And he studies this, right? So it's the science of networking. It's not just somebody's conjecture. I think this, but he's actually tested it. There are three types of people. There are takers. There are people who try to just take advantage of every situation. and they don't really do well long term. They just have to keep churning through people to kind of keep afloat. And then there are the matchers, and the matchers are the people who will say, you know, Chris, I did something for you, kind of expecting something in return. I'm not going to do anything else until you do something in return. And then the last people are the givers. And the givers are the people who are like, hey, Chris, I want to refer you to this person. I know you're going to do a great job. Just take care of them. Appreciate it. You know, don't worry about helping. They don't say this, but don't worry about helping me. Just pay it forward, because I know it's going to come back to me. Well, what Grant and his colleagues have discovered is that the people who give are far and away more successful than the other groups. It's not even close. So we need to focus on just doing things for other people. You know, your agents out there, they just need to do things for other people and just know that they're doing a good turn, and know that it's going to come back, because it does in time. It will in time.
And I've seen that obviously with our folks, quite a bit. But I've seen that across, multiple industries where, folks are always willing to say, hey, how can I help you out? What can I get in touch with? It's that sense of satisfaction. But you are correct. What I've noticed is those people are absolutely more successful. You want to be around those people more often. It helps build those relationships, and it makes, you feel better about them, and you trust them, right? You trust them. So you want to get people to help them out as well. So
yeah,
it makes perfect sense. But I'm glad to hear there's more of a science to it than just my own.
No, there's another book out there by a gentleman by the name of Terry Bean. It's called Connected. And he talks in the book about what kind of happens in the brain. And when somebody does something, when you do something for somebody else, because we lived in these tribes and we're hardwired to, I need to contribute. What ends up happening is their brain, they think, okay, how can I help Chris? And they'll work on that problem subconsciously, just continually. They'll just keep running, and they'll be in tune to things that can help you. Why? Because you did something for them. So you really don't have to chase people down to return the favor.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done something for somebody, they're predisposed to do something in return. It might not be a perfect match. It might not happen immediately. It might be years in the making, but they're working on it.
Well, and I think you appreciate it either way, right? You appreciate the fact you're able to help somebody out, and if they return the favor, that's fantastic. But
yep.
I think you're right. We're being more the giver on the giver side is really a sense of satisfaction in and of itself. But tell us a little bit about, we talked about this, off camera. Tell us about the best ways to network, because I think this is very interesting.
Yeah, the best way to network is really finding ways to add value to the people around you, and that can take on lots of different meanings. When people think of networking, they often think about, okay, I've got to go to that event. I've got to wear the right clothes and have the right handshake and say the right things and do all that stuff. And in reality, you don't necessarily have to do any of that. You don't have to be at the event, and it's really about adding value. What are the things that you can do to add value? Helping people, finding out how you can help them. And helping people is not about necessarily giving them referrals or giving them money. It might be just making introductions. One of the sayings I have is everybody I know could benefit by somebody else I know. It's just a question of connecting people. So you stop and think about it. You almost have an endless reservoir of things that you can do to help other people. Bob, you really ought to know Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what'll come from that, and that's not my responsibility to know, but you're both great professionals. You're both out in the business communities. You're on the west side of town. You're on the east side of town. I think you guys should talk. You never know. And 95% of the time, those people are coming away saying, wow, that was great, because they know they're somewhere I need to be. Right. Even I've found people who are direct competitors. You have two insurance agents start talking. You know what? I can't write this business. I don't want to lose it all, but if you can help me with this little business and, gentleman's agreement, not take the rest, we both win. And so it's great to kind of have these networks. And so it's about adding value to other people and finding ways to add value, and then just trusting that it's going to come back to you, because it will. It'll come back from those people, or people seeing you do those sorts of things.
That's fantastic. I can tell you that, we see that every day. You just mentioned the insurance example. That does happen quite a bit. People specialize sometimes in commercial, sometimes they specialize in, very large buildings, or they only do a certain type of insurance. And other people are doing just, home and auto, or very specialized in luxury products. It just depends on who you're dealing with. And they'd rather refer that out and have it done correctly than try to muddle through and then, have it done, so. So
Right.
that happens in real estate all the time. People who specialize in a specific area or only in a certain price point, they'd rather send it over and get a referral fee and just do the right thing than try to get everything out there, because they just don't, they're not as efficient that way. And they don't do the best job for their client that way either. So
Right.
Love that concept. You basically just say, when I looked at this before we had the conversation, how do you engage with folks? We talked a little bit about that. So he asked about, asking questions about them, portraying, confidence going forward. That's an attractive trait. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's so often, especially when we're in events or just even meeting people over Zoom or online like this, and there's a lot of this going on, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. But you really need to make it about them. You need to have a conversation. You need to kind of figure out about them. That's how you're going to add. The best way to add value is when you know how you can add value. So you want to talk to somebody and find out, okay, what are their pain points? Maybe they're fine with insurance, and maybe it's not insurance, but maybe it's those cute little kids have grown up to be big, smelly teenagers and they need a bigger house, right? And so you start having these conversations, or maybe it's a childcare issue and somebody who can help them with that. But that's all comes through listening and having a conversation with them and trying to learn about, okay, what is it about them? So when you have conversations with people, you don't come in with an agenda other than I want to learn about this person.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, in time, they will find out about you. You just let them talk. They will find out about you. That's the key.
That's fantastic. So we've gone through a couple different topics, and you mentioned, earlier on, just a few minutes ago, when you go to that meeting or you have to have a special handshake or a special business card. Well, today we're all walking around looking like this, and we're not going to those meetings. We're all doing everything digitally, at least for the foreseeable future, at least in the near term. Let's say it's another 6 months, not another year down the road. And, I don't know if we're going to be fully back to, engaging in large groups for maybe a couple of years even, people feeling comfortable with it. So let's say that goes on for 2 years. You can't stop your business. You have to figure out how to engage in networking. How are you recommending that we engage and network with folks in today's environment?
Well, in my mind, it doesn't necessarily change because we've had the banner up there. Networking is about relationships. And in reality, relationships are kind of a one-to-one thing. Like when I work with groups, I'll ask people, okay, how many people here are married? And you'll get a show of hands, right? How many people are married to 2 people? And the hands go down real quickly. And I joke about it and just say, okay, you know what? I realize somebody out in Utah has got 17 wives, and God love them. But we, the reason we have these monogamous relationships is because that's how relationships are. Now, obviously, you're not going to have one relationship with people in business, but my point is that when we went out to face-to-face groups, we were having one-to-one conversations to begin with. And the fact that there's 500 people in the room does not change the fact that it's one relationship. And I share from there's a book out there by Berta Medina Garcia, and she talks in there about going to networking events. And she says, if I go to a networking event with 5 people, I bring 5 business cards. If I go to a networking event with 100 people, I bring 5 business cards. And she goes on to explain that the reason for that is that she doesn't have this intention of meeting dozens of people. I'm going to be there for 2 hours or whatever. The maximum I can really have a relationship with are 5 people. So let's pull this to the COVID world where we're doing a lot of this one-on-one stuff. There are Zoom type meetings where you can be on screen with lots of people. I mean, these things are happening out there. And you you do have the advantage. While that may seem like a disadvantage, you do have the advantage that you can still have one-on-one conversations. You and I have never met face to face, but we've talked a couple of times. I feel like I know you. If we ever were to meet at a conference or something face to face, it would be like, okay, hey, we've talked before. I get this sense, you've seen my facial expressions, I've seen yours. You might be a little taller, a little shorter than I perceived, vice versa. But by and large, we're meeting. And so people have this opportunity. They can do these things. The other great thing about what's happening, and I guess my underlying point is we should embrace this, right? We've been given lemons, let's make lemonade. People ask me to go out for a cup of coffee. Chris, that's a 90-minute venture, right? Drop what I'm doing, get in the car, drive to where they're at, have a coffee for 30 minutes, get back in the car, get back to work. It's 90 minutes. I can have 3 conversations in that 90 minutes over Zoom that are very productive, even more productive than a phone call. And so I have the ability to do a whole lot more of this, a whole lot more efficient. There are a lot of professionals out there saying, wow, I knew about Zoom, thought it was kind of weird. Now I'm really embracing it because I can see what I can do. I can meet with my clients and they can get a sense about me, and I'll courier documents over, and we can handle the logistical end of things. There's electronic signatures. There's a lot of ways we can get around that stuff. So again, the point is that it's really all about relationships, and we had relationships before we had fire. We had relationships before we had the telephone. We had relationships before cell phones, LinkedIn, email, all this stuff. All these things, all these tools are doing is allowing us to have relationships across a vast distance at lightning speed. You're in Florida, I'm in Ohio. Yep.
Well, it also, I think a lot of people, as you mentioned before, they were using, some distance, some sort of webinars. We had put on different things along the years. Zoom was used, numerous times, but it was almost a secondary item. But now everyone's forced to learn how to use it well, not adjust your hair in the middle of the conversation or look over here, eat popcorn in it because you're on camera. A few months of that, you get pretty proficient. And so now everyone gets to be more commonplace. And so it becomes a lot easier because everyone has that expectation. When we go back and hopefully have a vaccine and everything's in place and we're all having, able to travel, I'm not sure every CFO in the world is going to go, do you really need to go there live? I mean, it's going to come back and say, why don't we cut your travel budget down and do more of the other, where people are used to it. And then it becomes convenient. It really comes down to convenience. Well, am I really going to spend a week doing that when I could have, 74 calls next week, just on Zoom or reach out to folks, and they're expecting it the same way. So I think there'll be a point of time for transition. I think there's going to be a blended, hybrid where people do want to get together in larger groups, at some point. But until that happens, I think, networking, just like we're doing today, is the easy and convenient way to do it and safe way to do it, really, across the board.
No, I totally agree. I mean, if you remember in the mid to late 90s when email was first starting to, email had been around since the 70s, but it was really becoming commercial. There were a lot of people who said, you know what, I'm not doing email, call me. And eventually those people, they just started to embrace email, or you died. I'm not getting a website. That's just a fad. Anybody who doesn't have a website anymore, you're out of business. I'm sorry. I mean, there are plumbers out there with websites. Get a website. So, and I tell that to people with respect to Zoom. Embrace it. Get a good camera. Get a good microphone. Show up. Look professional. Don't give me the COVID look like, oh yeah, I'm stuck at home. I mean, you never know when $1 million is sitting on the other end of it. You don't know. It could be a referral. You don't know. So just walk into it like that.
Well, I already had this in my house, so that was great. This is just convenient for me. Yeah, absolutely. I think people are making adjustments, getting lighting. They're
Yeah,
doing a lot of things they never would have done in a million years, unless this was kind of thrust upon us. So
right.
again, making the lemonade out of the lemons. And so, to get to the one last point here, and I want to keep you. You have 3 keys to developing relationships, and you can say it in 2 different ways. The way we have it on the screen was from your book. So
Yeah.
talk about it in layperson term, and then talk to us about this.
Well, I mean, yeah. When I go out and give talks, I always joke about it in the beginning. I said, listen, if you want to tune me out, you can. But if you come away with nothing else, I want you to understand this one thing: being successful with relationships involves being known, being liked, being trusted. And in my book, Foundational Networking, I really kind of break those down into the words that are on the screen. Presence. You know what? People want to be associated with individuals who have a great presence. They're confident, right? They're not cocky. They're confident. Um, they're they're present in having conversations. They look for these things, and so you need to endeavor to have those sorts of things. And when you're present, then when you're present, that is really how you want to be known as this person who, you know what, they're, you know, when they walk into a room, they just carry themselves, and that's really kind of the presence aspect of it, and that's how people kind of get to know you. The like piece of it really comes down to, in the book, I'll call it generosity or altruism. Those words are interchangeable, but people cannot help but like somebody who's trying to help them. Cannot help somebody who is being generous. And so you need to endeavor to try, and again, we talked about this, give to the world around you. And in the book, I never talk about giving money. I spend probably, I don't know, 80 pages talking about it, and it's never money. It's, about giving people encouragement, giving people your time, giving other people credit. All those little things that people chalk up in their mind as, wow, this person is a generous person. I want to associate with them. I mean, I asked the question, when you walk into a networking event and there's two people there, there's one person who's constantly self-promoting. When they walk into the room, you're ducking and covering, right? I don't want to talk to that person.
Exactly.
We all know the person. I was the person. But if there's that other person that, hey, Chris is here. This is great. Every time I talk to Chris, he's got a great insight. He's got maybe a referral for me, or there's some information. I got to make my way over to talk to Chris. And that's kind of the person you need to be. You kind of need to be that person who's generous. Then the last piece, integrity or trust. I mean, we do business with those we know, like, and trust. All things being equal, right? All things being unequal, we do business with those we know, like, and trust. And this is the perfect example I use all the time. Most people pay more than they need to for insurance, right? Because they have an agent. They could go online and dial 1-800 number and get it super, super cheap. Why don't they? Why do they have a We Insure agent? Because of the relationship. I'm going to pay a little bit more because if I'm in an accident, I know I can call up whomever my agent is, and he's going to take care of me. And I'm going to have a rental car, and I'm not going to have to mess with it. And that is worth it, that relationship. It's worth it paying a little extra money. And so the trust piece of that is key. And a lot of people will say, well, I can't build trust if people don't give me the opportunity to establish that. And my response is, we build trust every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You asked me to be here on time. I was on time. That is a signal of trust. If I were 10 minutes late, well, you'd be off doing something else. But that's an aspect of building trust. Ensuring that other people get credit for the things they do, that's an aspect of building trust. And those are all the things that kind of build our integrity. And all those things kind of come together to create relationships with others.
Well, it's definitely been enlightening. I hope that people go out, pick up at least one, if not all 8 of your books, because I think understanding the power of networking and using that going forward. I've learned 3 or 4 things today, and we've already talked before. So that I made a few notes as we were talking, and I think everybody could benefit from, reviewing how they handle their own relationships and coming from that, the aspect of being generous with their own time, effort, and helping others to actually grow your own business down the road is truly the key. And that's the science behind it that I didn't even realize. I think naturally it occurs, but I think when you think about it, every deal you've ever gotten was because of conversations or treating people well in the past have come from other relationships. It's rarely that these days you're just putting up billboards and people flock to you. It's more, especially in what we do, it's more about people trusting what you've said in the past, trusting your integrity, trusting your relationships. And the only other thing I would say is, we insure is a fantastic opportunity. No, just kidding. I would say that people do get use that relationship with their agent. Hopefully, in most cases, they pay a little less than not more. But you also have that consultative aspect. You have someone you can rely on because you pick up a phone and you say, okay, I've got the cheapest thing, but I don't know what I really purchased. And
Right.
End of the day, if you actually need the insurance and you realize you just really thinned it out to the point where it's the cheapest thing there, and it doesn't meet any of your needs or doesn't pay for the accident you just had, or doesn't have flood covered and there was a flood in your area, all of a sudden you're out. And it could be a $100,000 mistake. So having that someone you can rely on, that trusted professional that you can have a conversation with, and that's what part of networking is having other professionals that you can say, hey, Frank, I really needed, someone who's a CPA that can help me with my taxes. Can you give me some advice on this? And then next year you've got 3 other people that I work with that are now using you as well, because you helped me out with just some of the stuff I needed that one day. So I truly believe that this, it is the power of networking, and those relationships are the key to everyone's future. And I can't thank you enough for joining us this morning. Coming straight out of Columbus, I understand it's a little warmer now, so up there.
Yeah.
But, I certainly do appreciate that, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future and talk a little bit about when we start transitioning back to live events.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to. That'd
be great. Frank, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day.